So cheese is great. Cool story. I'm Alison Roman, and I am going to be making a baked ziti. Except I'm not really gonna use ziti. I'm gonna use rigatoni, but the concept is the same. Baked ziti, if you're unfamiliar, is a baked pasta, tomato sauce, and cheese, an insane amount of cheese. All of that gets kind of layered, almost like a lasagna, and it gets baked. So the cheese is all melty and golden, the sauce is saucy, it's fantastic. It freezes really well, it keeps well overnight, it's kind of the ultimate do-ahead dish. We are gonna start, it's just me. I am gonna start by making the tomato sauce. It's gonna be really simple, very basic pantry staple items, onions, garlic. We're gonna use crushed tomatoes. We're gonna use whole tomatoes, some tomato paste. This is the kind of tomato sauce that I find to be just like a really good basic tomato sauce if you wanna just serve it over pasta regularly. I don't want it too oniony or garlicky, so I'm just gonna use 1 medium onion and like 4 cloves of garlic. I like to keep it very simple. I like to taste the cheese and I like to taste the tomatoes. So we will start by adding olive oil. I like to use quite a bit. Again, we're using 2 cans of tomatoes. This is feeding a lot of people, so you can like feel good about throwing it all in there. And I'm seasoning as I go, like always. To sort of give our tomato sauce a bit more like depth of flavor and richness and a little bit of sweetness, I'm gonna add tomato paste. And when you're cooking with tomato paste, you wanna make sure that you're cooking it in the oil to kind of fry it a bit, and that's gonna take away some of that like tinny tomato paste canned flavor, and also caramelize the sugars that are in the tomatoes paste. The tomatoes paste. The paste belonging to the tomatoes. I'm using a whole peeled tomato and a crushed pureed tomato. And the reason I do that is because I really like the different textures that both cans lend. This is like what you'd make a Bloody Mary out of, Bloody Mary. But this is more like a tomato juice with whole pieces that you're gonna crush with your hands, so you'll get like bits of chunky tomato. And this is more like thick, luxurious puree, which is gonna add a lot of body. So I like using both. I think this on its own, 2 cans of that would be too thin, and this on its own would be too thick. So the 2 together, absolutely perfect. Chef's kiss. This is like a stand back moment because it will splatter at you. You wanna stir it till it quiets down. All right, and then I'm gonna add the other can of tomatoes. Wild. And then I like to just crush the tomatoes in the can. Honestly, if you haven't hand squished a tomato into a pot, you simply have not lived. Now I'm going to just season this bad boy, salt and pepper. I'm gonna add some chili flake. Other acceptable spices would be like dried oregano, which is really an herb, fennel seeds, stuff like that. And I'm just gonna simmer that super low, gently. I'm not looking for it to get super thick because it's already kind of thickened thanks to those crushed tomatoes, but I am looking for some of that water from those canned tomatoes, the whole ones, to evaporate. I want all the flavors to get to know each other, to mingle, to kind of become like one unified tomato sauce. Our tomato sauce is cooking. It's gonna simmer for about 20 to 30 minutes. And don't worry, that time will be well spent because we have to boil our pasta and we also have to make our cheese mixture. So like any pasta, we are gonna salt our pasta water. It should be salty like the sea. I know you've heard that a million times. And I would take that to mean, I'll say like 4 large pinches. All right, cheese. So 3 cheeses, they love each other, they need each other, they depend on each other, and they all serve a purpose. Ricotta, in this extremely whimsical container, is there for creaminess and for sauciness and for richness. Our friend Parmesan is there for saltiness, sharpness, and depth of flavor. And then mozzarella, which is there for like stringy, ooey, gooey, melty, brown, bubbling vibes. It's a holy trinity of cheese, and you're gonna be so excited to put them in your baked ziti. When buying ricotta, you wanna make sure that it's full fat, and you wanna make sure that it's got a small amount of ingredients. So this is just milk and salt. What can I say? I love this ricotta. I can't quit it. I'm gonna use a box grater to grate this cheese just because for anyone who's ever grated a half a cup of Parmesan with a microplane, we just don't have that kind of time. And then I'm gonna add my heavy cream. What that's gonna do is it's gonna keep the ricotta as it should be, which is delicious, creamy, rich, saucy. If you'll notice, sometimes when you've had baked pasta, lasagna, stuffed shells, whatever, sometimes the ricotta can dry out and get really grainy. And this addition of heavy cream is gonna prevent that from happening. And this gets a half a cup. Any more and it's gonna be maybe a little too soupy, a little too liquidy, and any less, you're not gonna get like the full effect. And then we're gonna season it salt and pepper. If you want, you could add something like chopped chives, chopped parsley, or something like that. But when I'm making a dish like baked ziti, that's, you know, pretty classic, pretty straightforward, I like to keep it classic and straightforward. I don't really feel like this is the time to innovate. Call me old-fashioned. I've been called worse. You just wanna mix it until everything is really well combined and that your mixture tastes well seasoned. It does. That is delicious. I didn't forget about our tomato sauce. I'm just gonna give it a little stir. Nothing needs to happen. It's just hanging out in there. I'm gonna check on our water. Oh my gosh, she's boiling. Oh my goodness. I am gonna do a whole pound of pasta, and that is because we're serving 6 to 8 people. You know when you make pasta and you're doing it on the stove and everyone's like, make sure it's al dente. I really mean it this time. I really, really, really mean it. It has to be al dente. It has to be like before al dente, and that's because you're baking it for like 40 minutes. And during that time, the pasta is gonna continue to cook. It's gonna continue to cook in the sauce, mixed with the cheese. And the worst possible case scenario is that your pasta just kind of like loses all its life. And that's not what we're here for. We're here for like pasta texture that just happens to be baked. Our pasta is cooking. Our pasta sauce is going. Our ricotta mixture is done. And now all that's left to do is to cut the mozzarella. And you can grate this if you want. I like doing larger pieces for baked ziti because I like the look of that like dotted, melted, globby cheese. I'm gonna pluck one, lucky rigatoni, just to make sure. We'll test it, cutting into it. It's just cooked through. Still a little crunchy, which is exactly where we want it. Our pasta's ready, our sauce is ready, our cheese is ready, we are ready, I am ready, the ziti is definitely ready. All right, so I'm gonna drain this, saving about a cup of water. I'm just gonna take a ladle and just kind of ladle it into the sauce because as you can see, it's pretty thick. And I feel like once this takes a trip to the oven, a lot of it's gonna evaporate. And you don't want it to be too sticky or tacky. You still need to be saucy enough so that it can evaporate without becoming like too thick and pasty. So I'm just gonna add about a cup of that pasta water to our tomato sauce, which again has starch, which means it'll thicken. And now it's perfect. This has like a bit of an assembly line vibe, which I really am into. And I do this anytime I'm making a layered pasta dish like a lasagna, baked ziti. I wanna have everything that I'm putting into the baking dish all in one place so that I'm not like reaching back and forth and spooning and saucing and it's like crazy and it's too hectic for me even. So get it all in one place. For me, what defines a baked ziti is its sauciness. It is a saucy pasta. Instead of just dumping this into our sauce here, I'm gonna put it back into the pot that we boiled it in. And then I'm gonna take about 2 cups of this saucy sauce. You don't have to measure it, but it is actually like a pretty useful tool. Just to kind of evenly coat everything. The idea being is that each tube is like thoroughly and evenly coated. So now comes the layering. And anytime I'm making a baked pasta, I like to start with the layer of tomato sauce in the bottom. It just kind of prevents sticking and make sure that that bottom piece is really nice and saucy. You don't need to measure this or anything, but you know, you're gonna wanna take about 1/3 of the pasta and scatter it onto the bottom here. And then I'm gonna spoon more sauce. Using about half the ricotta mixture in this layer because there's only 2 layers of that, but there's 3 layers of everything else. And then our mozzarella. More sauce. The nice thing about a baked pasta is that you really don't have to like measure anything and it can kind of just be casual, a little haphazard because it's gonna be so delicious, it doesn't actually matter. If like me, you may have picked a slightly smaller than standard size baking dish and you're only now realizing it, don't fear. Just fit as much in there as you can. But I think it's gonna fit. I think it's gonna look really nice. So for our last layer, we're gonna add the last bit of pasta, the last bit of sauce, and perhaps most importantly, the last bit of mozzarella. And this is what's gonna give us our like ooey gooey, bubbly, super fun, stretchy cheese topping. And that Parmesan that I definitely didn't forget about and just great. I'm gonna give it one final sprinkle of some coarse salt, pepper. This is optional. I think it makes really nice texture. I think it makes everything taste better. And I love salt and pepper, if you haven't been able to tell. So this is gonna go into an oven, and because it is gonna be so bubbly, because it's gonna be so juicy, I'm baking it on a rimmed baking sheet. And I'm gonna line it with a bit of parchment So that way when the stuff does bubble over, it has somewhere to go instead of burning on your sheet pan. This baked ziti is extremely heavy. There's like 48 pounds of cheese in this thing. So just like use 2 hands. Ow. It's the moment we've all been waiting for. And by we, I mean me. Our baked ziti is ready to come out of the oven. It's been about 35 minutes and she is looking extremely bubbling, golden, toasty, delicious. And I can tell because when I was in the other room, it smelled like pizza. And that's how I know that the baked ziti is ready. Oh, it's like I just had a baby. Our baked ziti is done. There is cheese, it is bubbling, it is saucy. I'm gonna let this cool for like at least 10 minutes. During this time, if you were serving this, I would make like a big leafy salad, maybe with some parsley and lots of lemon, olive oil, and that's kind of all you need. This is otherwise a perfect dinner. The reason I like using rigatoni is because I feel like the noodles kind of curl up and get really nice and crispy and brown like that. And there's more surface area to crisp, and those are definitely my favorite part. And if you come over for dinner and I'm making this, chances are all of those pieces will be missing because I will have eaten them before you got there. So our ricotta has stayed really nice and saucy. Our tomato sauce is perfectly thickened, and this looks good as hell. It's so good. The pasta is really, really deeply seasoned. It tastes like tomato sauce, and it's not overcooked or mushy. It's so, so good. There you have it, baked ziti, extremely classic, not as hard as it looks. It feeds about a bajillion people. Luckily, I've got a room full of friends here to help me eat this. And if you like this recipe, there are more where that came from on New York Times Cooking.